Good men do the things they like to do. Great men do the things they need to do. But champions do the things they hate to do, to grow, to achieve, and to overcome all obstacles in their path. To learn more, visit www.evenplace.com.
I want to welcome everyone here to the Even Place. Appreciate each and every one of you being here today. We want to continue something that we shared last week entitled The Ways Wisdom Benefits You. The Ways Wisdom Benefits You. King Solomon had this expression which says clearly that wisdom is the principal thing. It's the main thing. And all you're getting, we want to encourage you to get a complete understanding. When I think about understanding, it means how can you replicate? How can you duplicate something? If you really understand it, then you can replicate it, you can duplicate it, and you can do it over and over and over again. For example, we gave an illustration last week concerning the fact if all of us were to go to MapQuest right now, we want to go to, let's say, Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a very, very simple way to do so. You get on 495, the Beltway, then you get on 95 South, then you go to 85, and you eventually get there. Now, it doesn't ask you for whatever reason, if you're male, you're female, you're young, you're old, you're black or white. It doesn't ask you your culture, your ethnicity, your society. It just asks you where you want to go. And that's very, very important because too often, sometimes we don't do one simple thing. If there's something you're lacking, just go ask someone, what's the recipe? How do you do what you do? And too often, we don't do that because Paul said it this way: when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child. Speak, understand, think. Speak, think, and reason. But when I became a man or a woman, I put away childish things. One of the things I'm trying to learn how to do, and it took me a little while, I have this expression, it took me like 50 years to find out where the bathroom is. I mean, I'm finally beginning to get what it's all about. People who are children don't ask others for help. It's just that simple. Have you ever noticed a child can get into a car? They can be 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years of age. They will always believe they can drive the car. They don't need no driving lessons. They just are convinced they can drive the car. And you can't tell them, you need to have a license. I don't need no license. And they'll stand in your lap. They may not be able to put their foot on the pedal, but they just feel that they can do that. And one of the things that I'm doing right now, and again, it's not that I've apprehended these things. I'm learning to have someone in my life, and I need to have someone in my life concerning everything I do. For example, we just released a book called Dr. Alvin's Book of Ponderation. I got the title from an advisor. I have a writing coach. You may call it a coach, you can call it a pastor, you can call it an instructor. When I play golf briefly, I do have a golf pro who teaches me golf. I'm on a weight loss program, and I have a nutritionist. She's the juice lady who is the nutritionist for George Foreman. Every Tuesday at 12 noon, I have to submit to her a journal of what I ate that particular week or didn't eat, and she goes over with me my diet so that I can stay on track because I have a weight loss plan. So far, I've lost 55 pounds. I plan to lose a whole lot more, but each and every week, I have to report to her. Every Thursday at 11:15, I report to my trainer, and she's helping me with my exercise program. There's so many calories I have to lose every day in order for me to hit my goal. I am decided that everything that I need in my life, who am I going to for counsel? Who am I going for advice? And you don't just go to anyone. You want to go to someone who is successful. I have an expression: you never ask a failure how to succeed. Find out somebody who is successful at what they're doing, and then just take the time to ask them. And sometimes when you're looking for mentors, when you're looking for coaches, you're looking for pastors, or whatever you want to call it. In fact, the other day, I have a friend of mine, he has a website entitled You Need a Rabbi. So, he's saying that you need a rabbi in his life, and you go to that website. His name is Rabbi Lapin, and he teaches you how to make money. He says, a lot of people will hate us, but we Jewish people, we're rich. He says, you can get mad or you can call me and I can teach you how to get rich. Okay. And so I got several of his books, and one of his most powerful books that I have is Thou Shalt Prosper. One of the reasons why we decided to do what we do here at a home is I realized that most everything I've ever learned in my life, I learned in a person's home. I grew up in a home. I got a lot of wisdom from my father. I got a lot of wisdom from my grandfather. When I went to school, there was a school that now is called Duke Ellington School of the Fine Arts. But prior to that, it was a literary arts program. It started in a home. When I went to college, I lived in the home of my dean, because I'm like, you can't get any better than living in the home of the dean. And then because of me living in the home of the dean, he walked me across the street to NBC and got me a scholarship, and they paid for my education. One of my mentors, in fact, you know him, Gary Lewis. I used to go over his house in Tyson's Corner. He had a horse farm over there. We would sit, he would grab a yellow pad, and he would tell me things. One of my mentors who has a worldwide ministry, he recently passed a few years ago. His name was Archbishop Benson Idiosa. He would take me over to his house in his houses in Nigeria. And the one time I was asking him, I said, how much land you have? He says, I don't know. And I'm looking at him like, you got to be tripping. Now, I know you're blessed, but this dude is tripping, you know. And then he began to take me where he lived, and he couldn't count the number of houses he had. And he would sit around and we would talk. And while we were talking, he would always grab my ear and say, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? Another one of my mentors is Dr. Fred Price. You know, it's nice going to someone who got an elevator in their house. I mean, all the major teachers in my life, I learned something from them in a home setting. So we decided to start the Even Place in a home, because I know the value of learning something in a person's home. Now, one of the things we've been talking about lately as it relates to wisdom being the principal thing is we're talking about the subject of discernment. The subject of discernment. For example, we do a lot of examples using food. And one of the things we talked about the other day was, if you want to be able to have a healthy diet, you want to have fruits, vegetables, and spices. Fruits, vegetables, and spices. If you have that all day long, you will live a healthy life. But if you want not to live a healthy life, you can have salt, sugar, and fat. And that's one of the things that people do. You take those three things, you're guaranteed to gain a few pounds each and every way in your life. Also, you're going to end up having diseases that you don't need to have. And so it's very, very important for us to understand that. And one reason why we use the word three is because one of the things that Solomon, who was the wisest man, did, he said in Ecclesiastes, the 4th chapter, verse 12, he said, a threefold cord is not easily broken. And so we believe that a lot of times you look at things in three. So whenever we talk about something here, we're going to break it down for you in the subject of threes. Okay? Now, one thing I want to talk about today is, and I want you to write this down. Each and every day, you have to make a decision based upon three areas. Divine responsibility. What is my divine responsibility? Each and every day, you have to make a decision concerning personal accountability. Personal accountability. So every day, now I call it divine because my faith believes in serving God through Jesus Christ. Also, I believe a part of it is the universe. So every day I have to look at my life and see, what am I doing to be a blessing to God and also to the universe? You know, at first I was kind of reluctant to, but now I recycle. So all the plastic bottles you have around here, I have a little container for it, because I want this earth to be here as long as possibly can, because the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. So every day I have to ask myself, every day you have to make a decision based upon three things. Number one, divine responsibility. Number two, personal accountability. You have to be accountable to yourself. One person said, I have to save myself toward this untoward generation. And number three, you have to look at people's expectations. So I'm going to say this again. Each and every day, every decision you make is going to have to relate to three parts: divine responsibility, personal accountability, and the expectations of people. I'm going to say it one more time because I want to make sure you understand this. Every day you're going to make a decision, because what happens is, if you're not aligned in those three areas, you're not going to be successful. Those three things have to be aligned together in order for you to be successful. We're going to close by giving you a story concerning this principle. Again, I want you to make sure you understand and write this down: divine responsibility, personal accountability, and number three, people's expectation. I'm going to give you a story about a lady. She was born in Lancaster, South Carolina. She met an extraordinary man, and back in those days, back in the 40s, there were not a lot of opportunities in South Carolina. So her and her husband decided to, do a Jed Clampett. They said, we need to move away from here. Now, Jed went to California, the place you ought to be, so they loaded up a truck and they moved to Beverly. I'm not going to try to out-rap you, buddy, but because one of the other principles we taught you before, always remember this: growth in your life is determined by places, people, and principles. places, people, and principles. If you're not growing because you're around the wrong people, you're in the wrong place, and you got the wrong thinking. Because we looked at Isaiah, the 55th chapter, and this is a powerful scripture. I don't think a lot of people understand this. In Isaiah 55, what happens is it says, ho, yo, 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 yo. If you don't have any money, come by and eat. So how can I come by and eat without money? Then you find out a little bit later on, he says you got to exchange your thinking. If what you're thinking right now is not producing the results, because if you change your thoughts can change your world. And so he says, all you got to do is begin to think differently. Think a little higher thoughts. So if I want Maine lobster, I go to Maine. I want potatoes, I go to Idaho. I love Southeast Anacostia, but I don't think I want to get a filet mignon from Anacostia. They just don't grow there. So remember this, places, people, and principles. If you get those in alignment, you can always be successful. So let me give you a story about this woman here. So all of a sudden, she decided to move her husband to Washington, D.C. because they felt that as they were migrating north, that if they migrated north, they could live a better life. Divine responsibility, personal accountability, and expectations of people. They decided to have a family. And the first person that came out in the family happened to be a young man. He happened to be a young man that eventually grew up to be a carpenter. Then after they had this young man who was a carpenter, they decided to have another child. This another child happened to be a daughter who ended up being a customer service manager at a telephone company. Then they decided to have another child. The other child happened to be a boy. But between the time they had the first child, which is a young man, the second was a daughter, and the third that was a young man, the mother began to have mental challenges. She began to have what society would call a nervous breakdown. To break it down to you, she was like 2 French fries short of a Happy Meal. That's what society would say. Society would say that the light's on, but there's nobody in. Okay, she was 1 flew or 2 flew or 3 flew over the cuckoo nest. So when you have children and you are having nervous breakdowns, they will tell you, maybe you not want to have any more responsibility. Maybe you don't want to have any more children. So they begin to question her and her divine responsibility, personal accountability, and also people's expectation. Because, you got to deal with your own personal issues. You're struggling with some things. And perhaps what you need to do is to help yourself by not having so many children. But by her being crazy, quote unquote, by society, she said, I want to have another child. Okay? So she has the son, the daughter, and the son. She goes back and forth to hospitals. I got a chance to interview the husband. And the husband said to me one time, one of the most painful things he had to do was to take his wife, his girlfriend, and commit her to St. Elizabeth Hospital. Because that was tough. He said, but I got to submit her there because I don't have the funds to take care of her. One time, the oldest son heard a lot of rumbling in their bedroom. He thought they were in there fighting. He was not used to that kind of rumbling. And so he's going to run in and save the day because ain't nobody going to hit his mother. He goes in the room and the husband is there on the ground holding her down because she's going through one of those things. So society says, don't have any more children. But, like in the great words of James Brown, I don't know karate, but I know crazy. She knows crazy, so she decided to keep on going. And so the next child that she wanted to have, there was a miscarriage. And everybody's telling her, you may not want to have any more children. But she didn't pay him no mind because she knew her divine responsibility, personal accountability, and people's expectation. She saw someone in her future that was depending upon her to bring them into this world. Then all of a sudden she had another child. It happened to be a boy. He ended up growing up to be a journalist. Then after that particular child, she began to have another desire for other children. But during the process of time, she ends up going back and forth to the General Hospital and St. Elizabeth Hospital. You may want to stop doing this. But she saw that there was somebody else that she needed to bring into this earth. See, mothers are very, very important. They are greatly used by God to usher into this world a wonderful, extraordinary baby. That's why we all are very close to our mothers. That's why the Williams brothers have all these songs. My mama prayed for me. And, there's a lot of songs concerning mother. But then she had another miscarriage. Won't you stop? But she didn't stop. She ended up having another son. So let's look at the story here. And we're talking about divine responsibility, personal accountability, and we're looking at people's expectation. A son, a daughter, a son, miscarriage, a son, miscarriage, and then a son. Now, why are we telling this story? This story is very, very important to me and is extremely dear to me because I'm talking about my mother. Even though the world may call her crazy, she's my mother, Mary Floree Jones. And I am the one son that came after the first miscarriage, and my other brother is the son that came afterwards. And I know sometimes it troubled my brother because of the fact that he was born in St. Elizabeth Hospital, but I told him like this: I would rather be born in St. Elizabeth Hospital, which is a mental institution, than not be born at all. Now, I thought about this many times, and a lot of people don't like to talk about things in their family that may be uncomfortable. But I'd rather talk about an uncomfortable mother who was crazy enough to have me than perhaps if she was a sane mother, I wouldn't be talking to you here today. So each and every day, you're going to make decisions based upon divine responsibility, personal accountability, and people's expectation. I was the third one there. I was expecting mama to come through for me because evidently she saw me and she wanted me to be in this world. I'm going to close with this thought. I didn't know until my mother died that she had mental illness. You say, how do you know that? Because my father protected us from that, and my father would always make sure whenever she had a bout, he would rush us over to our aunts and uncles. And back in those days, we had a very big extended family. So we didn't know. Every weekend or so, let's go over to Aunt Ethel's house. Let's go on Alberta's house. And we ate real good, so I ain't mad at nobody. I ain't complaining about nobody. Now, one of the things I struggle with in my life, and you got to look at some of these things, we're going to talk more about this in the future. But one of the things I struggle is, I don't remember my mother hugging me. I don't remember my mother telling me she loved me. And some of those kind of things have affected my life. But one thing I do remember, when I was the age of 14, I would stay in the kitchen, because I used to love to go in the kitchen, and I would stand at the counter watching my mother cook and cook the food. And I don't know if any of you liked it. I used to like to get the bowl when she would make some cake. I like the batter. I don't know if anybody know what I'm talking about. I need to check with my nutrition, see if that's on my diet. But at the age of 14, the one words I do remember my mother say, one of the few, I remember two of them. My mother said to me, she said, Alvin, are you going to receive Jesus into your heart as Lord and personal Savior? So she ushered me into this world, and she told me at the age of 14, I need to help you to get to the next world. So at the age of 15, 1 year later, she told me that at 14, at the age of 15, she died at the age of 15. And I remember my promise that I made to my mother when I was 14. So 1 year later, June the 8th at 8:10, that's why we started this at 8:10. 8:10 is the time I met God at 3917 New Hampshire Avenue in Northwest Washington, D.C. That's why we do everything at 8:10. We release things on our website at 8:10 because this is a reminder for me of my conversion. So maybe if my mother was sane, maybe my mother, quote unquote, society was a certain kind of way, I may not be here today. But the one thing she did for me, and the one thing I do remember, she asked me, am I going to have a relationship with God? So I want to encourage you each and every day, you got to make three decisions: divine responsibility, personal accountability, and people's expectation. And I thank God, even though my mother may have been considered crazy in this world, she is my mother, and I thank God she understood discernment, and she discerned me, and because of that, I'm here today. God bless you.